When we're in desperation mode, we're not thinking straight. So one of the mistakes we make as solopreneurs and freelancers is we're often just in our own head and we don't talk to anybody about it. Like we can't talk to our spouse about it because we don't want to stress them out. Can't talk to our online friends about it because we don't want them to know that we're struggling. And so we just stay in our head and we just try to solve everything in between, our skull bones, right? And articulating it out, getting it out of your head by talking it out with a therapist or writing it out sometimes helps, but you get it out of your brain. And then having someone else that you trust look at that and go, okay, this action you're planning on doing is crazy.
Hey Feasters, welcome to episode 1 of season 3 of Live in the Feast. I'm Jason, and if you're new to the show, Live in the Feast is a seasonal podcast for freelancers looking to build a profitable business. Maybe even build some recurring revenue so that you can live the life of your own design. We've got a great and very important show for you today with Justin Jackson, founder of MegaMaker and Transistor.fm. I wanted to bring Justin onto the show because if you haven't heard him before, you're missing out. I admire him and how he's gone about creating a life for himself and his family. As a product and marketing guy, he's a thinker, he's curious, always testing things, but more importantly, he has no problem in sharing what he's doing when he's doing it. I know I can be better at that. Today, we dive into his story a bit and how going independent has shaped his life for the better. But he's also opened up a bit about being depressed and how that's affected him, his family, his business, and what he's doing to and suggests everyone to do to work through that sort of stuff. So let's dive in. This episode is brought to you by Feast, the premium online coaching and community designed for web developers, designers, marketers, and freelancers of all type wanting to specialize their business and build recurring revenue that's profitable and sustainable. Today's market is ever changing, and yesterday's advice won't cut it. Feast members get access to the roadmap and training library, which includes everything you need to niche down, build recurring revenue, and become that go-to respected person for your services. That, together with monthly roundup calls, exclusive workshops, expert chit-chats, and our Slack community, you'll have everything you need to live the life of your own design. If you're serious about not competing on price and having clients that respect you and your expertise, then join Feast. Head over to feastcourse.com today. All right, welcome Feasters. So today's featured guest is Justin Jackson. Welcome, Justin.
Hey, how's it going, Jason? Good to be here on the show.
Thanks for being here. Justin is a husband, a dad, a product guy, podcaster, multi-time podcaster, or maybe it's just podcaster, I guess, if we have a number of podcasters. But now he's a SaaS owner, and if you've listened to him for any length of time, he calls himself a self-proclaimed jackass on the internet. So he works with software and SaaS companies and building products over at megamaker.ca. Transistor.fm is his new podcasting platform. And he's doing a lot of different other things in the mix here. So Justin, I'm sure I didn't do that intro justice. So tell us a little bit more about who you are and why you do what you do.
Yeah, no, that's a pretty good intro, actually. I like introducing myself as a jackass because I don't want to take myself too seriously. Yep. I think there's a lot of people in the tech industry that, they just take themselves too seriously. They make it sound like we're doing this insane, there's people around the world that have a lot harder jobs than we do. And right. I just feel lucky that we get to, type on keyboards and put stuff onto the internet. And yeah, And the other thing about just being introducing myself like a jackass is then hopefully people don't take me too seriously. I don't have all the answers. I'm just kind of working my way along as I go. And I think one thing I've learned, I've been doing software for about 10 years. And one thing I've learned is that, man, ego really is the enemy. And when you start to believe too much of your own hype, or smoke too much of your own crack, you really, it's just dangerous. And so, yeah, I'm just a jackass trying to figure things out like everyone else.
Yeah. And I think, the audience knows, and I always say it too, like, look, I'm learning out loud. I try to share what works for me and what doesn't work for me. Mm-hmm. And not everything that I do will work for other people. But, if you can get some lesson out of what I'm doing, then, all the more power to that. Mm-hmm. And I feel like, I always say a rising tide raises all boats. And, if I can help somebody else solve a problem that they're encountering, then awesome.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the approach I like too, is where it's much more collaborative. That's what I've always liked about the internet. And, being able to reach out to other people and say, hey, I'm struggling with this. Have you run into this? And, because there's just that many more people, you're not just confined to your own town or, your own network. You can reach out beyond those walls. You actually get better information, but you have to be open to it. And
yes,
that means you have to be humble enough to realize you need help, and giving enough to also help people in return. When you figure something out, you can't just keep it to yourself. You've got to, let other people know how they can do that too.
Yeah. No, 100%. I mean, look, you're all the way on the other side of North America than where I am.
Yeah.
Right? And without the internet, that wouldn't happen, right? Like I've got to get out to you because, that's one of your things, right? Like if you come to my town, which is a small town in Canada, right? I'm from New York, so it's big town, and there's plenty of people that come through New York, and I'm like, hey, why didn't you tell me you were coming through here? Like they'd be at the airport. I was like, I don't know, man. It was just an hour layover. I'm like, I'll meet you at the airport. That's fine. Like that's one of your things, right? Like, hey, if you come to my town, let me know you're coming, and we'll go grab a cup of coffee or something.
Yeah. I was getting too many emails. So this is going to sound like I'm going against what I just said, but I was getting too many messages from folks that were like, hey, can I pick your brain, and can I jump on Skype? And I don't mind doing those every once in a while, but it was just becoming too much. And also, that's part of the way I make money is I do coaching. And so, it just wasn't manageable to say, well, I'll do this one for free, but I'll charge for this one. Mm-hmm. So I said, okay, an easy way to manage this is to say, if you make it to Vernon, BC, which is, it's about 4.5 hours, 5 hours from Vancouver inland. And if you make it here, I'm around, I will buy you a coffee. And surprisingly, there's people that do this. About, I would say, probably 45 people a year fly in. Or one guy was riding his bike across Canada. He was from the UK, and he stopped by. There was a couple from Quebec that were road tripping across North America, and they stopped by. And so, yeah, I really dig it. That if they've made the effort like that they really want to see you. And I actually just enjoy being in person with folks too. I'm thinking about rebooting the Product People podcast. And one of the ideas I'm throwing around is that whenever possible, and I'd like to, if I do this, I want it to be, 80% of the time, I want to have the interviews in person. And you can only do this if you do it in seasons, and it's not going to be a weekly show where it just goes forever. This is going to be we plan it, we record them, we produce them, and then we release them. But I think, having a mix of, doing some stuff where it's just over the computer or Skype or typing like we are, but also meeting people in person is really great. And that's why I like conferences. Yeah. That's also a trick I figured out, when I am flying into New York or Portland or San Francisco, I reach out to everybody. I say, hey, I'm coming in, I'm not normally in your town. Here I am. And because I'm not normally in their town, it becomes a special event. It's much more likely that I might be able to get, a meeting with somebody or have them make the time because they know, whoa, if I don't jump on this, I might not get another opportunity for a while. So
yeah. I mean, I've done that with several people that I've, spoken to, become internet friends, people that I've looked up to and sort of been virtual mentored by, that have, come through New York. Chris Marr from the Content Marketing Academy is one, Troy Dean is another. And, these people live on, UK or Australia or something like that. And they happen to be coming through New York, and that's kind of like, I guess, their layover into their vacation or whatever it might be. And it's not even necessarily that they're here for business. And, they say that like, hey, look, I'm going to be in New York. If you want to meet up, just, a half hour, it is what it is. And let's see if we can grab a cup of coffee. And you're right. It's like to have that, face-to-face conversation with somebody, it's like, it goes a long way to solidifying that, relationship that you're building with that person.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we need both. There's something about just having internet friends and internet conversations. But if you're not getting out of your bubble, if you're not getting out of your neighborhood, if you're not getting out of your town and going to conferences and meetups or sometimes just, I'm just going to book a cheap ticket comes up. I'm just going to book a ticket, go and fill my schedule with a bunch of hangout times or meeting times and not, just to hang out, just to touch base with people. Just, hey, I'm in town. What are you doing? Can we, go for lunch or grab a drink or something? Those are so invaluable. And one thing I've realized after doing all of these, I've probably interviewed, over 100 people for the different podcasts I've done. And when I hear their story, the defining moments are never, I took a bunch of LSD and then I had a great idea. And then, all of a sudden the next day I was, I got $1 billion in funding. The big movements in people's lives are always as a result of relationships. So it's like, Nathan Barry will say, well, Heaton Shaw at MicroConf encouraged me to double down on ConvertKit. And if he hadn't said that, I wouldn't have done it. Rob Walling has been really clear that without his co-founder, Derek Reimer, they would have never had the success they had with Drip. So there's these relationships we built are actually worth investing in. They're not for the sake of getting something out of them, but in the future, you will get something out of them.
Right.
And you can't just do that by sitting in your bubble. You need to get out of your comfort zone. You need to get out of your town and, actually go and spend some time in real meet space with folks.
Sure. Yeah. So let me ask you then, what would you consider your defining moment in life?
There's lots. There's a few. One is meeting Kyle Fox in Edmonton. He was a product manager for a local startup. I was a product manager for a local startup. And he was the one that said, hey, we should really do a podcast together. And I had been interested in podcasting, but it was him kind of pushing me that got me to do my first show. And, if he hadn't, I wouldn't have met all of these people I know now. I wouldn't, I was just speaking at MicroConf in Las Vegas. And as I was on stage, I was thinking, how did this happen? Like, how did I get here? And it's because you can trace it back to Kyle Fox saying, hey, we should do a show together. And, we thought it would never be anything. So that was a big one. Another one on a serious note that I've been talking about quite a bit is getting a therapist this past year was huge for me. And I'm writing a blog post that should be out tomorrow morning on justinjackson.ca. And it's,
so by the time that this comes out, it will have been out.
Yeah. You can go there and check it out. It's basically, what would I do if I had to start all over again? And number one on that list is I would get a therapist. Even if you're feeling good, even if you're feeling like you don't need therapy, I was definitely one of those people. If you meet me, you know, everyone thinks I'm really sunny and energetic and positive. But, you know, I got really depressed last year. And what I wish is that I'd already built rapport with a therapist before that depression hit. And I think you can, you know, go out and just, what I did was I just Googled, you know, therapist in my town, right, and went to like 4 or 5 websites, got a feel for each of the people. And then I booked, I emailed 3, and then I booked a phone call with one, just a 30-minute phone call to say, hey, this is me. I'd like to get a sense of who you are. And she charged me for that. Like that's my initial session, right? But after that phone call, I was like, okay, I can trust this person. I have rapport with this person. And then I, you know, started going into her office. And now I go about every month. But yeah, I think mental health is something that a lot of entrepreneurs don't think about. Definitely. And I've definitely been the business owner who's like, I don't have time for that, or that's too much money. Like we have good healthcare in Canada, but we have to pay for stuff like that out of pocket. And so, you know, all those same excuses that I think everyone is making right now as they're listening to this are the excuses I made. And what I urge people to do is not make the same mistake I did, which was not to have anybody. And then when things do get bad, you don't have a rapport. And also you'll be surprised what comes out when you sit on the couch and, you know, your therapist goes, okay, so how are things going? And you'll, oh, great. You know, everything's great. And And then all of a sudden you might be like, oh, but I'm really anxious about this launch I'm doing. And oh, the other day I was comparing myself to this other person on the internet and it made me feel like garbage. Those are the kinds of things that a therapist can be very helpful at helping you kind of untangle.
100%. Yeah. I mean, I'm glad you said that because I mean, and I've spoken about my own kind of mental health and awareness. I mean, for basically 2 times in my life where one was, I was around college, I was, in a very bad spot. But it was all just, the way that I internalized family problems, social problems and things like that. I basically just swept it all under the rug and just that rug became too big and, it was a bad time. So, and then it was, another time was, more recently was, my wife and I, she wasn't my wife at the time. I was doing freelancing for, 2+ years. Yeah. And it was my second go at it and, doing it full time, my second go at it. And I was just like, what is wrong here? Like, I just can't get myself unstuck here. And I was really depressed about it. I was seeing other people, hey, look, I'm at the beach and I'm doing this. And like as what you said, like you're comparing yourself to what's going on around you. And I said to her, I said, look, I think I'm just going to have to get I'm going to have to go back and get a job because we got bills to pay. We just got engaged. I was just like, this is not the life that I want us to live. Right. And she literally looked at my face and she goes, yeah, but that's not what you want. Yeah. And I know that that's not what you want for us. Right. Like, we'll figure it out. We'll do it. It is what it is. And I'm just sitting here. I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, we live in New York and like, that's not cheap. And like I don't want to raise a family on the, hey, am I getting paid this month kind of thing? Like, I just don't want that. And like, I was dumbfounded by that response. And that was kind of like, it wasn't I went to a therapist the first go around, but that was my therapy session. It was like, hey, this woman just told her guy that to not go get a job. Like what kind of, I mean, I got to hold on to this and I got to go do what I need to do. Right. Like, so it's definitely something at which, I mean, it took me a little while to go at. I wish I could say like it was a flip of the switch thing, but it was something, like, hey, I was battling this thing, and like, May is whatever, mental health awareness month. But I feel like, it's not talked about because I think people don't want to share the warts of themselves. Everybody wants to put on that shiny, like, coat, like this is what I'm good at and this is what I'm doing and look how great I am kind of thing. But I even on my daily podcast, I spoke about it, last week. And, I said, hey, look, you when you are freelancing and your mind's not right, then your business isn't going to be right. Your physical space is not going to be right. Your physical well-being is not going to be right. You have to get your mind right. And I'm glad that you kind of brought that up there because, it's definitely a defining moment for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the other thing I like about having a therapist is, I just felt like there's so much of my personal stuff that was crazy or so like, I'm like, oh, she's never seen anything like this before. Right. And to have a professional who does this every day and sees hundreds of clients and has seen, every situation under the roof, she goes, you're actually not that special. You're not that unique. I've seen this before. And just to be like, what? There's something encouraging knowing you're not the only one that goes through hard times. And I also like having a place where I don't have to pretend. And I think the one disadvantage of the internet, or maybe one of the downsides, is we often feel like we have to pretend and we have to put on this, certain profile or has certain, feel, and I mean, there's obviously a balance here. You don't want to you especially don't want to be overly negative online.
Right.
And you want to be, dealing with your struggles in a healthy way. But I think there's also some room out there for some real vulnerability, and to say, things are hard. And one thing I've been sharing lately is that because I was so depressed last year, the last 6 months especially, I just did not work. And I drained the business bank account. And now in 2018, I'm in the process of rebuilding that, of getting, I'd like to have 6 months worth of expenses in the bank account. And, it's hard. It's hard getting that momentum again. But it's real. It's what I'm going through right now. And, I hope I'll make it through it, but it's just one step in front of the other. Right.
Yeah,
and, real life is real life. And there's a lot of people pretending. And I think personally, I just don't want to pretend, and maybe I don't want to pretend anymore. Maybe I was pretending too much before. And, I think I'm still doing good work. I still want to do good work. And, but things aren't always awesome, especially in business. There's a lot of ups and downs.
And that's the thing too. Like, you said you drained the bank account. And for me, it was like, I would wake up and I'd be like, there's no way I can code today. Like I can't concentrate on lines of code when I've got all this garbage that's floating around in my head and I can't even get out of my own way. Yeah. Like, how am I going to solve somebody else's problems if I can't solve my own problems? Right. And like, it is, like you said, real life's real life. Right. And, it's definitely, that's definitely some great sound advice there.
Yeah. And again, I think if someone is out there and is like, oh, I feel like that, therapy is just a great way to deal with that. And to go, okay, here's how I'm feeling. This is what a therapist will do. Will be like, okay, how are you feeling? and acknowledge that those feelings are real. Like you really do feel overwhelmed. That's a big one for business owners. I'm overwhelmed. I feel like, I'm not getting enough leads. This deal fell through. Cash flow is not doing great. My MacBook Pro just broke. Like there's all these things, right? And so the therapist will acknowledge those feelings. Okay, those are real. It's good that you're a feeling person. But now what are we going to do? Like we don't always want to act out, especially negatively based on our feelings. And so there's this realism to it as well, which is, okay, we've got your feelings out. Those are important. Now what are we going to do? How are we going to make good choices? And I think one of the mistakes we make as solopreneurs and freelancers and all is we're often just in our own head and we don't talk to anybody about it. Like we can't talk to our spouse about it because we don't want to stress them out. We can't talk to our online friends about it because we don't want them to know that we're struggling. And so we just stay in our head and we just try to solve everything in between, our skull bones, right? And by articulating it out, by getting it out of your head, and people can do this by talking it out with a therapist or writing it out sometimes helps, but you get it out of your brain and then having someone else that you trust look at that and go, okay, that feeling you're having is a normal feeling. People have those feelings, but this action you're planning on doing is crazy. And, when we're in desperation mode, especially, we're not thinking straight.
Yeah.
And so what are you going to do that's, the best thing, the best next natural step for you to make your life better? And I think we need to check ourselves on those a lot more. The answer isn't always, well, I'm going to fire up a new project, or I'm going to, or I'm going to, sometimes our reaction is I'm going to browse Reddit for 6 hours, and that doesn't help either. Yeah. So having someone to check you is really helpful.
Yeah, no, it's definitely true. I mean, I think, especially having feelings of solving your own problems as an entrepreneur. I mean, that's what we do, right? Like as a business owner, we solve problems. We solve our clients' problems. We solve our own business problems. And then when we feel overwhelmed, like you said, sometimes it gets to a point where you just shut down.
Yeah.
And then people are like, hey, what's wrong with Jason? He kind of seems out of it. And I've had my own friends kind of check me on that stuff once in a while. It's like, hey, I haven't heard from you in like a week. What's what's going on there? And just to be able to have those checks and balances in your life, I mean, that's it's very important, especially as a business owner.
Totally. Yeah.
So now that we completely depressed everybody, right? Let's what was the highest point of your career so far?
Oh, I mean, there's been lots of those too. And this changes for sure. I mean, initially, and this really depends on your personality. That's another thing I've been doing. Like as I was dealing with this depression, I would go and do like the Strengths Finder test.
Yep. I've done that. Yep.
And, just looking at who I am and how I'm built and, what kinds of things I should be doing as a result of that. And, the truth is I really like, being on stage. I really like, being the center of attention. I really like to connect people. I like to connect with people. I love, to me, one of my favorite things is flying into a city and sending out a call on the internet and having a bunch of people show up at a pub and just spending time with them. That's by far one of my favorite things. My family and I went to Scotland, and, everyone else wants to go see these sites and wants to go, look at this museum. And I just want to do meetups with all the people in Glasgow. And I did that twice while we were there, and they were both my highlights. So I really, love that stuff. One of my favorite projects is the Mega Maker Club, which you're a member of. Mm-hmm. It's a community I started in 2013, and it's for solopreneurs, bootstrappers, people building tech businesses. We have a Slack channel and forums, but just the relationships that have been built there, I feel like it's different than a lot of other communities. We've been able to last a lot longer than other communities. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't make very much money. It's like you pay $2.99 for lifetime, I think is the thing, and it it makes enough to support itself. But I just really enjoy that group, and was recently in Las Vegas for a conference, and a bunch of Mega Maker Club members were there, and getting to hang out with them in real life was just so fun.
Oh, I can imagine. I mean, it's funny. Like, we talk about like, internet friends and meeting people in real life. And, I joined Mega Maker Club, I guess, within the past year or so. Mm-hmm. And, when I joined and then I was looking at the member list, mm-hmm. I'm like, oh, he's here. Oh, he's here. He's here too. Like, wait a second, what's going on? And like, these other people that I've met online, met in person, in other communities online, in Slack groups and stuff. I'm like, hey, nice to meet us. Nice to see a familiar face in here. Like, what took me so long? It's funny, and it is. It's one of those communities that has lasted a lot longer than most out there. And I've built new relationships inside there of people that are, of all varying different stages, and just to be able to be a part of that kind of community to, get opinions on what you're doing inside of your business. Because like you said, a lot of, I would say 99% of the people that are in there are building some sort of tech business. Now they could be freelancers or software people or SaaS people or, something like that. But, mm-hmm. It's like very different. Like I came out of the Java world, right, in mm-hmm. the 90s, and I did a lot of custom Ruby on Rails development and that kind of stuff. And then I kind of, meandered a little bit on PHP and found myself in the WordPress space, right? Yeah. So now once you're in the WordPress space, that you're kind of like entrenched in there, right? Yeah. Like you gotta stay in that bubble for a while. Yeah. And because I came from outside of that space, like I didn't grow up doing WordPress. It was just, hey, this is what my clients are asking me to do. Yeah. Now I'm like, I was in there for a long time, like 5-6 years. And by the way, I used the podcast to kind of get my name out there into that space. And that in and of itself was an experiment that I had no idea would work, and it worked. Right. Yeah. And now I'm kind of like going into these other communities that are, again, like it's vastly, hey, look, here's you over here and you're doing this thing in the healthcare space. Oh, you're doing things in data sciences, it's like mm-hmm. all over the place. And just to be able to build and form those relationships, online is amazing, right? Like you don't have to be at location or at that job to do that. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just been so fun. It's been fun to put together that group. And I think the last thing that comes to mind, back to your original question, is when I published Marketing for Developers, because that was the thing that enabled me to quit my job, quit consulting, and go independent. And now I'm 2 years into this, and I've seen the good sides and the bad sides of being independent. But just to make a living from the products that I make there's something about that's been very mm-hmm. freeing. And I wouldn't say it's always better than doing services. And in some ways I'm going back to that now. I'm doing a lot more online coaching, but just having this asset, this thing that I created that, makes a couple sales every week and, keeps, whenever I do a launch, it brings in a big chunk of revenue and helps feed my family. That feeling is incredible. Mm-hmm. And, it's something that's what kickstarted it for me. I've done other things since then, but that first one is, it's really special.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing too. Like you touched upon it there, is like building something that, puts food on your table, right? It feeds your family, supports your family in that way. And, I look at your Instagram stories, which, by the way, I don't know how you keep up with that stuff daily like that. I'm like, holy cow, whether it's snowboarding or the beach, the lake, or, I mean, like, I'm like, holy cow, how does he do that? Like, I'll go 2 days and I'll be like, oh yeah, I got to do that. Like, so it's funny, but like, I could tell, like, I mean, you're very involved with your family and your children. And like, is that something that why you decided to go independent in the first place?
Yeah, partly. I mean, there's not a lot. I live in a really small mountain town, and I knew when I moved here, I'd convinced my boss to let me work remotely. So I was working as a product manager remotely for this software as a service company in Edmonton. And I knew there wouldn't be a backup plan, really. It's not like a bigger market where I can just walk out the door and, go and apply at a bunch of places and get another job. And so a piece of this was, how can I figure out how to do this and live here, or really live wherever I want, and, make it sustainable. Mm-hmm. And I think the other thing that being depressed taught me this past year was I definitely don't need to work as much as I thought I did. Now, I wasn't working enough last year. I was just, not feeling good mentally. I've never had that before. Just, it was so hard. I couldn't believe it. I used to like really look down on people that, would say, oh, I can't get out of bed. I can't. But now I get it. It's a real thing. But what it taught me was, in the old days, I would be here in the office from like 7 a.m. till 7 p.m. if I could. I just loved being in the office. I wasn't always being productive. I was just like here. Mm-hmm. And now I'm, my typical day now is I'll get up, I'll help the kids get ready for school, drive them to school, go for coffee with my wife. And then she has to be at her office at 10 a.m. And so I'll be here in my office around 10:30, work, and then pick up the kids around 3:30. So my day's gotten a lot shorter. And I'll still work the occasional evening and the occasional like Saturday morning. But yeah, there's the flexibility of being able to pick my kids up from school, of, being able to, go to the beach, or if they've got they call them PD days here. I'm not sure what they call them in the States, but like where the teachers do professional development, the kids don't have school. And so we'll, in the old days, it would be like, we'd be rushing around trying to figure out who's going to take care of the kids. But now I know I can just be around. So yeah, it makes a big difference. And, to be able to live your life. Sometimes I forget actually how good it is for me now. I used to spend 2 hours a day in my car driving to and from work. And I know there's probably some people listening to this right now who are in their car, and, they're frustrated. And I know that frustration. I know that frustration of feeling like, I'm wasting 10 hours a week just driving to the office, and, being able to, like, it's probably a 5-minute bike ride from my house to my office downtown. It's like incredible. Right. And, even when things aren't going great, like, right now I'm like, okay, I got to get some money back in the door here. It's encouraging to feel like, okay, but I really do have a great life. And I'm around my kids a lot more than I was.
Yeah. I mean, that's, Kai Davis, he said it best, and I think he still has it on his Twitter profile, of living the kind of life that you design. Mm-hmm. And like, I love that expression, and just to be able to, because that's why I built my business, to because my father was not home. He was working all the time. And, I would see him, when he came home from work at like 8 o'clock at night, a couple minutes. I mean, he was my little league coach, it was what it was. But, I was like, I don't want that for my children or my family. So I got to, I knew at an early age that and I'll be honest, I mean, I have a mouth and opinions and stuff. I'm not exactly the best employee, right? And so I knew that, hey, let me see if this freelance thing will work. And I've tried. And, my wife, she was like you, she commuted 2 hours one way. And it was insane. And her company got bought out and we were going through actually buying our house. And she was like, they're moving further out east now. What are we doing now? I'm never going to see TJ. And I was like, just quit. Just it's not good for your head. It's not good for us. It's not good for TJ. I mean, it's just, don't worry about it. We'll figure it out. I kind of just threw it back at her, and, she's right now outside playing with TJ on the swing set. And it's great. Like you said, it's a great life to be able to just be around the ones you love,
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I think for folks that are far away from that right now, that might be frustrating for them to hear that. But the really, the other thing I'm realizing is you don't get the life you want all at once. It's this iterative process. And so for me, that started by begging my boss to let me work from home 1 day a week. And he said no. And then, the next year at salary renegotiation time, I said, okay, how about we cut my raise a little bit and let me work from home? And he still said no. And then I just kept bringing it up. And eventually he said, okay, you can work from home 1 day a week. And, that was the first step. And then, I started working on other things. And so I understand the frustration a lot of folks have, come on, you guys are talking about pie in the sky type stuff, right. But it starts by just, eating one piece of the elephant, okay, I'm just going to do a little bit right now to try to make my life better.
Yep.
And I'm not sure who said this initially, but a lot of people throw this around. And I think it's a good metaphor is, just try to get better 1% a day. So try to make your life better a little bit every day.
Awesome. Yeah. I love that. Yeah. I've heard that expression too. So this has been awesome. This is one of the longer episodes of Living the Feast, which is awesome. I mean, it's a great conversation. So before I let you go, what's the future of Justin? What does that look like in the near future? What are you passionate about right now?
So I'm working on a new podcasting platform called Transistor.fm. And
I love that, by the way. Total full disclosure, I am on that platform and it's an outstanding platform.
Yeah, it's been really great to have folks like you. We're in early access right now, and we're hoping to do the official launch sometime in July. So people can sign up for that at transistor.fm. And the other thing I want to focus on again is my newsletter. So every Saturday morning, or most Saturdays, I'm going to say not every Saturday, but whenever I have something to say, I'm going to send a newsletter Saturday morning, something you can drink with your coffee. And it's going to be stories, tips, and lessons that I've learned as an entrepreneur, as someone building a software business, as someone, who's gone independent. And so if you're looking for something, that's not, it's not going to be like really, sometimes it'll be tactful, full of tactics. Sometimes it'll be stories, but people are really resonating with the ones I've been sending lately. So yeah, justinjackson.ca/newsletter for that.
Nice. Awesome. So this has been fantastic, Justin. I thank you again for coming onto the show and sharing both the ups and downs. I mean, it's, I know it's difficult to talk about at times. And, I know that there's folks like us out there that are going through the same thing. And, hey, if you guys are feeling low or not right or something like that, definitely figure out a way you can, whether it's a therapist or a friend or somebody that you could reach out to and have a frank conversation about that. It's something that I definitely encourage you to do. And, and the high, like you said, take a bite out of the elephant at a time, right? Like I've been at this for a decade and parts of 15 years. So it's not like an overnight success. Justin, same thing. I mean, he kept on nudging his boss until basically they bludgeoned him until he said yes, right? I mean, if that's what you want, if you want that life that you want to design, you got to keep at it and go after it, because nobody's going to hand it to you. So,
totally.
So thanks again, Justin. Where can folks reach out other than your newsletter to say thanks?
On Twitter, I'm MI Justin. That's the letter M, the letter I, Justin. That's probably the best way.
Awesome. Great. So everyone, that's it. And as always, it's your time to live in the feast. Thank you so much for listening today. If you enjoyed this episode, then head on over to liveinthefeast.com and subscribe. Leave Justin and I a 5-star rating and review in iTunes, as it will help others find this episode as well. Next week, I'll be back with Curtis McHale talking about constraints and the funny things that both kids and podcasters say. Until then, it's your time to live in the feast.